nothing's given. You earn it. That's the way. That's the Arkansas way. There's no crazy money and there's no free lunch here. You have to earn it. But the work that we have gotten to work on in Bentonville, like the Thaden School, the opportunity to do the museum store, that was a competition.
Yeah.
We had to earn that. Good design can be good business. That store paid for itself in 4 months. And then the same with the Whole Health Institute. This just will be opening up in May 1. That was a competition. We did designs for it, and we won on the basis of ideas. And we're competing with firms from Chicago, from around the country.
We have proven that we can do work here, but there's also a lot of competition because people know that, this area is good and is interested in building more. So there's a lot more competition,
We're still doing our push-ups.
Yeah. So we still...
Well, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, great to be here.
Marlon and Ati Blackwell here, sitting here in your office in downtown Fayetteville. So here at the NWA Founders podcast, we want to encourage others in Northwest Arkansas, and what you guys have done here is absolutely exceptional. Over 200 design awards, 2020 AIA gold medalist, and I think there's a lot of people can learn from your story, so I appreciate you coming on. And kind of before we dive in, Marlon, will you give the overview, 30-second overview, Marlon Blackwell Architects, what do you guys do here? Maybe for people who aren't in the, architecture construction world.
Well, we're making architecture for the 21st century. That's American architecture, I would say. And the idea is that we are trying to ennoble places and enrich people's lives, their everyday lives, through buildings and places that improve the built environment, and make great places to be, everyday places, and work that is available and accessible to everyone, not just a few. We believe that architecture can happen anywhere, at any scale, any budget, and for anyone. And so everything we touch, doesn't matter how small, whether it's a carport all the way up to a new American embassy that we're working on in Central Africa, it all deserves to be architecture and be available and to folks to experience, to delight in, and to have a place to be.
Sure. Wow. Tell us your story here. Where'd you grow up? And then college.
I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about what
No, I think you covered it.
Did I cover? Okay, all right. But feel free to interrupt. I mean, this should be natural, like at home.
Yeah, I would say we will also add a little bit of character to the architecture. I think that's one of the things I feel like we try to do. There's a sense of certainly trying to create a sense of place. Wherever we practice, we don't just do work here. We're fortunate enough to, being able to do our work elsewhere also. But the thing that's really important for us is to connect with the project with our client and really understand what they're looking for, and also a sense of place. And also in some ways, I think we have a line that started many years ago. We call it recreating strangeness. In a way, strangeness is a strange word, but it's also recreating something, that you might have seen in the area.
You're familiar with in some ways.
Familiarity.
But in a new way. So interrupt the way in which you might have experienced it before, seen it. So we call it the strangely familiar. And that's a way we try to connect to our place, our local place here. But also we have a wonderful, talented group of folks here. And we're all quite familiar with the universal language of architecture. So we're really interested in having a dialogue with our own place here, Northwest Arkansas, or wherever we work, but it's also a dialogue at the global level too. So I think they call it the glocal, so we like to think of that. And we think of architecture as a material practice, but always as a cultural act that we are in many ways contributing to culture and helping shape culture. And in turn, the work that we do is shaped by nature and by public life. And so that's a lot of the things that kind of go into what we do and what we try to do. And we try to do it in such a way that there is what we strive for is authenticity. And so not the sort of corporate, I can find this anywhere in the country sort of approach. We really like to think of every opportunity we have as a type of one-off, right? It's unique unto itself, and we try to tap into that. And I think a lot of our clients really like that.
Yeah.
That it's bespoke for them.
I have a lot of questions going through my head that I want to dive in more on that. On the strangeness piece, before I want to tell you the story, both of your stories, but the strangest piece, would that be like the Thaden barn, the red, I mean, that was the first thing that came to my mind, the red barn, seeing this other places growing up here in Northwest Arkansas, just the barn is there.
Right. It's you can tell that it's certainly of its place, but it's also slightly out of place. It's like, I haven't quite seen one quite like that before. So, when Clayton Marsh, the headmaster at the head of the school at Thaden at the time, came to us about this barn, I listened to him, and he wanted a real barn that breathed naturally, naturally ventilated and everything. And because they're, Thaden barnstormers and all that. And I warned him, I said, I've been working on this barn for 30 years, so I'm ready.
Wow.
Because barns and silos and all these things that I also think make the landscape of Northwest Arkansas so unique and just a wonderful place to be, very pastoral setting, that those have been inspirations to almost everything we do. So we went back to the original idea of the Gambrel, Northwest Arkansas Ozark barn, and then we went from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so tell about growing up. Growing up, you did not live you did not live here. You kind of moved all over the place.
Yeah. My family's from Alabama and parts of Georgia. My dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up all over. I was born in Germany, lived in the Philippines for a while, Selma, Alabama, Florida, Colorado, Montana, back to Florida, went to school at Auburn, and then wound up in South Louisiana after school in the Cajun part of Louisiana.
Yep.
Then struck out for the city, went to Boston for 5 years, and a year in Italy, in Florence, lived there to get my master's degree at Syracuse, and then thought, well, maybe I could teach and practice, maybe practice what I preach. So I worked 10 years in firms before I kind of went back to grad school.
And when you were growing up, kind of going into when you were about to go to Auburn here, when did architecture become a passion, or was it a passion? Was it?
It became. You go through a series of things as a child. I kind of my formative years were really in South Florida, Homestead, Florida, living near the Everglades, and of course I developed a real love of nature, and of course being out in the Everglades, a real fear of it too, because there's a lot of things that can bite you and kill you. So I was really into nature, and I thought, paleontologist would be an interesting thing, and then I evolved into the
explorer.
Explorer, creative. I used to take. My dad also raced cars, stock cars, and mini stocks on the weekends. He had his own pit crew and stuff. So he'd take me out in the boonies, and we'd race, go karts and things. And I'd find skeletons, and then I'd wire them together to see what they are. And so I was interested in that. And then I got interested in creative writing, creating stories. And then I started cartooning. And so I started fairly young, and I would, every day after school, come home and I'd cartoon. And I'd make up characters and stories and, weird little comic strips and, humorous and wry and, those sorts of things you do. Yeah. But at some point I read a story about cartoonists that.
No, don't say that.
You don't want to say that?
No, please.
But it was true. I read a story that it was a news story, and it talked about how cartoonists have these amazing lives, but a lot of them have alcohol and drug problems. I was like, oh God, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll become an architect. Instead, which is a whole host of issues there. But I actually, to the point, I got to design in one of those drafting shop classes you have in like 9th grade.
Yeah.
Design your dream home and build a model of it. So I designed, it looked a lot like the house I was in. I was like, what the hell? It was terrible. But building it, shellacking it, and making a swimming pool shaped like a kidney. And I was like, wow, drawing this thing and sketching and building, and I was like, maybe I want to be an architect, having no idea what an architect really does, or the reading you need to do, and the math, and all of that other stuff. But that's where I decided. And 3 days after how was I say? I was pretty good in school, but I don't test well.
Okay.
My ACT scores, they were probably in the low end of football, in terms of, football players were outscoring me on this. So I had to I got into Auburn, but I had to do an option, a summer option deal in order to actually get into the program. So 3 days after graduating from high school, I was in college for a whole summer, just total boot camp for like 10 weeks. And then you have to survive that. And then if you pass it, high pass, you get into the program.
Sure.
So that's kind of this, that takes me right up to 17 years old. So I started college at 17. So.
And as far as like the industry of architecture and the degree of architecture, I know here at University of Arkansas, it's a 5-year program.
Yeah, is it same there?
Same there. Okay.
Yeah, it was the same 5-year.
And is that when you're selling Bibles too?
Yeah, that's at Auburn. Yeah. So a lot of kids in my family with not a lot of money. And so in order to go, it was financial aid wasn't going to cover everything. So I had to figure out how to get money. So this program, a couple of friends in architecture said, hey, we did this program last summer and you can make a lot of money at it. And it's sell Bibles and medical books and stuff through this Thomas Nelson Publishing out of Nashville, Tennessee. And so I thought, well, okay. And I, went and told my parents, and, they're quite religious. My dad thought, oh, what a great idea, out, pushing the word of God, which is like, well, no, it's actually not quite like that at all. It's like it's more of a business thing, and how to develop a sense of independence and self-motivation and all of these things. My mother was terrified, of course, because you're out, with a person out in the rural South. You live in one community, and then you spend the entire summer going door to door out in the country. Yeah, really interesting experiences. I did it for 5 summers, but put my way through school.
Wow.
We said you live like a rat for 3 months and live like a king for 9. And so it was true. I mean, I worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and had some wild experiences that I won't document here. We don't have enough time, but everything from getting a shotgun put in your back to meeting some of the greatest people you'll ever meet in your life, to spending a night in jail. So it's kind of crazy, but it was a great job, and put me into touch with roots and in places in the South you want to read about, and you got to actually experience. So that was a real life changer for me, and especially learning how to motivate yourself and how to learn the principles of selling, which are no different whether you're selling a Bible or you're trying to sell ideas. The principles of selling are pretty. You're selling a car. They're all pretty much the same. Yeah.
Well, what would you? Just trying to think of, maybe someone who's like in that same time frame of. It feels like you learn a lot of hard work ethic.
Well, I've never had a problem with work. I've had a job ever since I can remember. Paper routes, lawn business in South Florida. When I was 8 years old, I was out there earning money to buy an edger and kind of investing in my little. I mean, I've always had jobs. Yeah. So that's, work is never. In fact, work is all you have sometimes, because there's always someone more talented. There's always somebody smarter. That's what I found in school. It's like, but I can outwork you. Yeah. That's. I think you learn how to sell, like in a way that I remember when we first started. Like, there's always challenges. You're presenting this weird design that people never really see. They don't really know they want. But it's like Marlon's, I feel like his ability to always be positive about no matter how negative somebody's being at your product. Like if, and being able to... Or the process. The
process. Or like, whatever it is. Like, you're presenting something and they might like 50% of it and 50% they don't. And then they would say things like, I don't know if I like this, maybe you can change it. And he will hang on to the good stuff. Like, he'll remember like Marlon's idea, and still does today. And then try to figure out how he can make the other 50 that maybe we like, but the client didn't like, turn it into something else that the client will also like, and we still will like. And I felt like that's how we started. I think that's an important matrix for us, because like people always ask us, you guys must have great client because all the stuff that you do are so different or radical or different, like, I don't know, they don't know what they were. Like if you look at the Harvey Clinic, for example, right? They thought that we must have ready client that want something like that. But I think it's a lot of time it's like pushing the envelope and being able to be ready to turn a no into a yes, and yet, and make the client understand what they're getting and that they get excited about it and that kind of stuff. And I feel like one of the biggest thing that you learn as a Bible salesman, in your school, is the ability to, one, connect with all kind of people, being able to speak in the way that they would understand. So that's another very important thing that I see with Marlon, is that no matter who you are, like being able to speak and being able to connect, and then to be able to always stay positive. Like I remember him telling us, like, somebody might already have 10 Bible in their house and he's going to sell another one. Like how does he get there? I don't know. He does it.
Well,
I feel like.
Well, I like people. So, I mean, I like people. I like connecting with people. I like people from all walks of life. I was taught that way, that, you don't see anybody as you're better, or worse, somebody. So Ati's right. In the morning, I'd speak with a sharecropper and sit out on the porch and talk to him. And people don't buy into anything if they don't like you, number one. And so connecting with people is really important at where they were, right? Not talking over people or trying to patronize people either.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, I might talk to a mill worker, and then in the evening, a state legislator.
Wow.
And you have to connect with all of those folks. So I think it's important, because in architecture, we're first of all, people ask, what kind of projects do you not do? And I said, no, there are no bad projects. There are only on occasion bad clients.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of qualify the client in the same way they qualify you.
Yeah.
But we put stuff out there. I think the reason we're able to do it is because we're satisfying their needs and what their desires are and so forth. They may not know what they're going to get, but it's less of an issue if it doesn't look like everything else, because it does. It's what it does for them and their particular project that we've really addressed.
And talk about this first 10 years when you were just starting to practice.
Working for others,
Yeah, working for others. Were you able to be that selective from the get-go? I mean, you're learning more of the trade.
I never worked in an office because I couldn't afford to. Couldn't do the minimum wage, so that's why I was selling Bibles. So I got to keep 42% of the profits, and that paid for my expenses and my school for the rest of the year, so that's what I did. So when I got out, I had no experience in architecture. So I remember at a green Skylark, green and rust, filled with everything I own in the back, a portfolio, and I'd written some letters to some firms in New Orleans, and I went there, drove overnight from Auburn with everything I owned, and I think I had a total of $100.
Wow. And
I got there, and I waited 2 hours for the first interview with this really famous firm that was doing the World's Fair, 1984 World's Fair, but it's 1980. I waited 2 hours. I got invited in. They looked at my portfolio. It says, really nice. Where's your working drawings? Construction drawings. I said, well, I've never worked. Oh, well, we need people like that. Never once. I told them. So this happened over and over in New Orleans. I went to Baton Rouge, same thing. And then I wanted it in Lafayette, Louisiana. It was $7. No gas. And I was engaged to a Cajun girl from the time. And so I slept on her aunt's sofa. And I went out and started looking. This is it, man.
Yeah.
And I met this guy. His name was Wayne Korn. He owned a firm called Korn Sellers. So literally I had a business card when I went to work for him. It said, Marlon Blackwell, Korn Seller. It was just, it was confusing to everyone. But he looked at my portfolio for about 30 seconds and then closed it and says, how much you want? I was like, well, you didn't really look at the work. No, I see talent. What do you know? I said, you're not going to learn anything about design here. We're going to teach you the business of architecture. I was like, okay. So that's how I got on. It was tough. It was recession laid in. In the 4 years I was there, I was laid off 4 times.
Wow.
At one point, I was doing part-time architecture in the morning, and then I would go to the mall and sell Scandinavian furniture in the mall until 9 o'clock. Then I would go and do DJ because I used to do DJ work. So I was a disc jockey till from 9 to 2 in the morning. Wow. And I did that just to pay my bills for several years. So it was tough. And I finally, economically, I just couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I was also freelancing on the side after hours to build up my resume and my skill and expertise level. So I finally I had a friend, friends in Boston that said, "Hey, there's things happening in Boston." So I made the decision to go there without a job, just again sleeping on people's couches.
Yeah.
So what do they call it? Sofa surfing or
couch surfing.
Yeah, I was couch surfing for about 3 weeks until I got an offer and started up there.
And what kind of work were you working on in Boston?
Boston, a variety of work, everything from like dormitories to not public housing, but housing, things of that nature. I never worked for a firm in Boston. Good firms, very, very solid firms, and they treat the people well and stuff. But I was intimidated by all of that. They actually, when they made the offer to me, I said, well, that's a nice offer. I'll tell you what, I'll take $1 an hour less. They go, what? And I was like, well, I don't know how I stack up here. You got all these Harvard and MIT grad stuff. I tell you what, if I do a good job at 6 months, why don't you give me a raise? He said, we've never had anybody ask for less when they make an offer. And I was like, I just want to make sure, I stack up. Well, I did because I had 4 years experience and I stacked it. And I worked again. They loved people from the South that time because a lot of those other folks, they talked all day. Yeah, we were in there working our butts off. So that went well, but I never really enjoyed learning the work, but I really learned on my own. So I created an independent after-hours studio, and I lived in a loft. I had this pit bull and loft and some loft mates, and lived in an old tobacco warehouse in Beacon Hill. And I just started doing side work, and I got a chance to do a formal garden house in North Shore, Massachusetts, and it got published. It was like an award-winning kind of published projects on my own. And then my and an ex-girlfriend's mother who wanted to build a house in North Carolina, and she hired me and designed that house. And I would fly back and forth on weekends, North Carolina, and that house became an architectural record home and Southern Living Home of the Year in its category. So, and it happened just about the time I got laid off. I was working at a really fine firm at that time, but the recession was kind of starting in 1990.
Okay.
Yeah. So then that's when I decided I'd already applied for grad school. So, and I wanted to go to Europe. I'd traveled to Mexico and Guatemala, but never been to Europe. So I went there.
So why grad school when you're already, it seems like you're really building your brand, the Marlon Blackwell brand.
No. There was no Marlon Blackwell brand.
This is freelance work.
That didn't happen until he came here.
Every once in a while, a blind dog finds a bone. I mean, this is, I stumbled into a couple projects.
Yeah.
Because you got to be in pursuit. And I was a hustler, and it's like, got these projects, and I made something out of them, and I fought like hell in the field. Literally almost got punched out one time because, the guy called, he was from Maine working on it, and he was dyslexic, and he reversed all the details, the brick details, in reverse, and poured the concrete. It was just like,
oh my gosh.
I was getting onto him. He called me a masshole. And I was like, what'd you call me? And then the owner's out there, punch him. It's this crazy crap working with, you meet all kind of interesting people. But
you did build 2 good projects at
two
the time.
two good projects. And then I got a chance to, to give my first public lecture in Miami, Florida. There was this guy who was starting an alternative lecture series at the University of Miami.
This is before grad school?
Yeah, and he
in between,
he invited a friend of his, who's a really great guy from Miami, who was a Harvard grad who'd done this great project in Puerto Rico, to come, and he said, "Do you know any other people that are doing interesting work?" And so he said, "I know this guy." So I came out part of that, and that's how I met Ati. She was in the audience that lecture. But yeah, I decided to go back because I thought maybe I could teach. but I didn't want to teach. I tried teaching at the Boston Architectural Center in Boston. I was terrible. It just beat the hell out of everybody. I didn't know how to, I didn't know anything about how to teach. But it was a way to learn, what you need to work on. But I thought maybe I could have something to say. I don't really have anything to say, but after 10 years, maybe I have something to say. And then I was starting to get a little bit of success, so publication, and so I thought I need a master's degree in order to teach. And I didn't get in at Harvard. I applied, but like I say, I'm dumber than a bag of hammers when it comes to taking a what do you call it, an ACT test or something. So, so I didn't get in there. So I got in at Southern California Institute of Architecture, a really prominent school in Los Angeles, but they didn't have any money, and it was really expensive, and I had to have a car, and all, so I'm going to go to Italy. So that's what I did. And when I got there, I was 34. I was the oldest guy in the class. They called me the Dick Clark of architecture. But what I didn't have a natural, I mean, I can draw and stuff, but what I didn't have when these young guys coming right out, in the kind of their sort of natural facility and representation on it, I had in life experience, I had 10 years in practice, so I could make decisions in a thoughtful, timely way. I didn't need to pull all-nighters. I was kind of more disciplined, I guess. And so I just kicked ass in grad school. And they were so impressed that when I got through, they offered me a teaching position back at Syracuse. So, and that's how I got there. Yeah.
And Ati, did you go over there with Marlon as well?
No. Okay. I met Marlon in Miami. I think this is in between. He already got accepted to the program in Syracuse in Florence, Italy. And I had so when I met him, I went to a lecture that a friend of mine was organizing, and it's a new, University of Miami at the time was very, very classically trained architecture. Everything is very rational, very historically based, Anyway, so somehow along the line, it was a 5-year degree. I actually got a scholarship to study architecture. I ended up in Miami. I don't know how or why. I thought I was going to the East Coast or something, where you see the love story. I'm coming to America. So I had my 2 suitcases. I arrived in Miami. The gate of the airport opened. Somebody was picking me up, take me to the dorm, And I got hit by the heat, hotter than Malaysia. I'm like, wait, what? This is America? I thought it's cool, the ivy covered. No, it was not at all like that. But anyway, I don't know what I picked. I ended up picking Miami for no reason. I had no idea. Anyway, but it turned out a really good experience for me. So I remember in my 4th year, they had an option where you don't have to, but it would be nice if you can afford it to study abroad. And they have 2 study abroad programs. One is in London, the AA Architectural Association, which is at the time was probably the premier architecture school
in the world.
Okay. Right in London, across the corner from the British Museum. Wow. And because I was already on a scholarship, it doesn't matter where I go. They will pay me as long as I keep the grade. So I applied and I got in. I went there. And then after that, I went to the program that they have, a lot of architecture school have in Italy. And my program was in Venice. So I went and did that. So when I came back to the U.S. to finish my final year in architecture, I just got really confused because not confused, but I really learned all the modern architecture aspects that they thought it was a little bit when we were in Miami, but they weren't encouraging us to do that. So when I came back, it was I started doing all these modern things that you're seeing in London or Italy. Europe was really more advanced in terms of design and not just architecture, but the daily basis. You're walking down the street and you're looking at people and the environment, the way people dress, just things like that just really wake you up. Anyway, so when I met Marlon, I was already a young intern. I was working a year or 2. I was actually waiting to get a job in Malaysia because my scholarship was from Malaysia. And the deal was they pay me because they need architects in the country. And they were like, okay, I'll pay up for your education, but you have to come back and work for us for 10 years. I was like, all right, that sounds a good deal.
Yeah.
So, but when I graduated, there was a big recession that was hitting Asia at the time. And they said, okay, if you can wait, we don't have enough work right now, but like if you can intern at where you are. I was lucky enough, my best friend at college, his dad was a developer in Miami. He was like, yeah, I need some architect, young architect. Yeah, come work for me.
Oh, wow.
He has a department in his business there. So I started working a year, 2 years, changed my visa and got a temporary, working permit, like doing all of that. And after year 5, the company that gave me the scholarship said, because we couldn't honor our end of the deal, which is like, offer you a full-time job when you graduated, let's just like, write off this whole deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went home and write it off. Meanwhile, I was working. Anyway, that's how I met Marlon. For the lecture, I went to the lecture and then I saw some of the work. I thought it was kind of cool, like, some of the new stuff, especially the house in North Carolina, because it's all wood. It was like
concrete block.
It was modern, weird in some ways. Start to see the DNA, like
different than what you've been studying.
Yeah. And for an American house, like it was like that you would see in architecture record you would see that in California, but not in North Carolina. I thought it was cool. So anyway, like me coming from this background as modern in London and Italy. Anyway, after the lecture, I went and said hi to the people that organized the lecture, because they were bugging everyone that they know. They were like, make sure you guys attend the lecture. So I came down and I was like, I really like your work. And basically telling the guy that I showed up so that I showed up to your lecture to support his lecture series. That's how we met.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was the question?
No, you answered it. Just wanted to kind of fill in more of the background of the story. And then, so want to get it to, here in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So talk about the decision to move here.
Sure.
And I assume it was to teach.
And to practice.
Yeah.
So the deal, so fast forward a year, so from coming back from Italy, Syracuse, we had now started kind of long distance relationship kind of thing. And I had an offer to stay at Syracuse, but I felt, after one winter there, I was ready to go back to South. It's like 200 inches of snow. And I don't know, it was really gray there a lot. And, I don't know, a lot of Jackson Brown songs, and you get suicidal, just kind of like dealing with that environment. Although great school, great students.
Like 3 foot of snow.
Yeah,
I remember.
No, Ati 6. It was crazy. So and I was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I want to go back south. So I had some connections to North Carolina. And I thought, well, that's where I'll go. And I'd heard about this really great architect named Frank Harmon at NC State. And I thought, I want to go there. But they weren't looking. And in UNC Charlotte, they interviewed me, but it was kind of a boys club I wasn't really interested in. No women on the faculty, which I thought was strange. And then there was this opening here, and I came here, and I just fell in love with the landscape. And my parents, at that time, my dad was stationed in Oklahoma City. And I thought, well, I've never been to Arkansas. And they had a new dean, they had a new department head. There was a spirit of change. And I'd heard of Fay Jones. And his chapel, Thorn Crown Chapel. I remember I kept hearing about Fay, especially in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me that you could have a firm in the middle of nowhere, a national presence, And I was kind of tired of the East Coast, saturated with talent. It's great, but what I realized is that if you weren't independently wealthy, you didn't have the right pedigree, weren't a blue blood or whatever.
Or well-connected.
It's a pecking order.
Yeah.
And it's like, which is different from California, because people with talent or people with money there trust youth in a way you don't see on the East Coast as much.
Yes. There's not connection to family or anything like that. Like in California,
it's a little different.
It's a little, yeah.
But I wanted to go back to my roots in the South. Yeah. And I felt like, design needs to happen in the South too. And again, I'd heard about Fay, and he was making it happen. Maybe I could also make it happen. So, but I also wanted to teach, and I had enjoyed the year at Syracuse. So I interviewed here. The next day, I'm in the what is now the Graduate Hotel. I got invited by the dean on the next day. We're sitting there for breakfast. And he immediately makes me an offer, which I was almost offended by because I was like, well, wait a minute. You guys must be scraping the barrel here. You make me an offer in less than 24 hours? I mean, it's supposed to be a courtship and all that.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Let's date a little bit.
Yeah, let's date a little bit. And I was hesitant. I don't know. I'm, still single. And it's a small town. I've never really lived in a town for a long time. It's small and college town. And, I'm kind of hemming and hawing. He says, well, listen, let's cut to the chase. What would it take for you to come here? What is it that we could offer you? I said, well, I don't know. I said, I'm not an intellectual. I'm not a scholar. I really want to practice. And I don't want to be able to practice what I preach. Mm-hmm. He said, if you'll come here, I will guarantee you commissions to start your practice.
Wow.
I was like, really? And I went back and I told the dean at Syracuse that because he'd asked me how the trip went. And he immediately stood up from his desk and says, you need to go. Mm. It will never happen here in the Rust Belt. Wow. And so I made the decision. I had a little Alfa Romeo Spider Veloce. I drove, all the way from Syracuse through the West Virginia, all that, top down, on my new adventure to, Northwest Arkansas.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. And he delivered. He was true to, I found out later he had no idea how he was going to do it. What he did is he funneled phone calls that coming into the school almost on a daily basis of people looking for a student or for a professor that could help on the project. They wouldn't normally go to a firm.
Okay.
And so he funneled those to me, and within months I had a neat little project out in Weddington. I did, I call it the Barn House.
Okay.
So for some folks that, really lovely people, we still work, our travel agents basically, Dawn and Flynn and George Schmidt, but did this, they had horses. He worked on kit cars, and they needed a place to live. And we built them a one structure for all of that for like $40 a square foot. It was, now of course this is 30 years ago. But, and then it just kept capping, little projects here and there. And it over, slowly building. I thought maybe I'll do 2 projects a year. And we lived on the corner of Washington and Lafayette. Mm-hmm. And I had a little room in the back, which was, I moved here in 92. We were still dating. We got married in 94. And I talked her into leaving Kuala Lumpur. She was at.
I finally got a job in Malaysia. The recession ended, and then I went home. Because I didn't come here to stay. I came here to get an education and then go back. Anyway, I went back to Malaysia, and I have had, unlike Marlon, I have worked in Miami, doing great work there. Miami was really building up at the time. And also on the side of my boss's office is his cousin who was doing interiors. He was just a businessman, but he hired interior designers to furnish a lot of the hotels in South Beach and also condominiums. So they would crank out I don't know. At the time, there were a lot of small hotels that needed to be upgraded on the inside and the outside because Miami is suddenly becoming a happening place. So he would be his interior designers are really good with materials and stuff, but they don't know how to do perspective or they can't do architecture, So he would be hey, can I borrow Ati for a little bit so she can draw some of the stuff that I need? So I'll go over there, drawing stuff. And I'm looking at the interior design. And they would teach me how to do stuff. They were no, over here, I want you to put this material. Anyway, so I'm kind of absorbing the stuff that they're doing. Yeah. And this was before, there was no computer program. You have to do everything by hand. All the drawing is be generated by perspective, So you have to, you're selling this thing to Italian investors or German, those are where all the people were coming from buying in Miami. So I turned all of that and got to a point where I become an expert in interior architecture. I think this is an important thing in our relationship later on doing here. So after that, I think I ended up working in Miami for 5 more years, total of 5 years after I graduated. And then recession ended and I went to Malaysia. And then by then, I'm doing high rise in Malaysia. They're doing the Petronas towers, the Twin Towers. And it's I have an experience in Miami, the United States. Everyone wanted me.
Yeah.
When I went back, like, so, like working the high end kind of practice, and I'm really fast paced. I end up also working in both architecture and interiors, like, because architecture, imagine you're doing high rise from the first, it will be like 5 or 6 years before anything will ever be finished, because construction will take 2 or 3 years. Design maybe 1, So at the very minimum, 3 years before we see anything. So I realized like I got to keep doing interiors, because there in 3 months, you get a product.
Yeah.
Like, so then I start working with this company that does a lot of, whatever you call it, prototypes. So like if you are studying like J. Crew, let's imagine something like that, right? They have what we call British India, which is similar to J. Crew here. So you kind of conceptualize the lifestyle, all of that stuff. Like you measure everything, and then you like design the display, design the look and feel, and then you could design and everything in 3 months. Like, because they work 24/7. Like construction wise at night, because the construction industry, I mean, everything that I learned there is very different than here. So anyway, so that was interesting, like the whole integration between architecture, interiors, what it takes scale wise and speed wise, and also colors and things like that come into play. Anyway, so by then I had met Marlon. I was in Malaysia. I don't know, we end up like decided that maybe this is working, like relationship. I don't know. I never really thought it was real. It was just a friend,
Really? After 4 years?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I know, like my dad tells me, I remember right before I got in the plane, they were like, you're not dating any American boys. You're coming back here, okay?
Yeah.
So it's like, what? My dad never says anything like that. He's a very quiet guy, like very, like, so the fact that he said that, I was like, oh shit. Like, so I adhere to that. I only know Marlon as a friend. So in my mind, it was just a friend. I couldn't admit the fact that he's anything. Yeah. But anyway, Marlon came. Tell us the story and how you came. That's how it works. Like you came to Malaysia.
Oh, but I mean, we only have an hour.
Okay, so Marlon,
That story along.
a short form story. Like
the short form. There is no short form.
No, I'll tell him the short form story.
No, it'll be long.
I will tell the short form story.
Yeah.
So how we decided, like, we kind of like, I don't know, we end up proposing over the phone. And he said, no, he tells me that I proposed to him. Like, because I was like, I don't know, maybe we should get married. He was like, what? Did you just propose to me? I was like, no, what? He was like, and then he said,
maybe
wait
I should
a second,
tell the story because I think you're leaving out some subtle.
No, that because you'll
but we
take the
should
longer
move on.
version. Okay, we'll move on.
Because
anyway,
I think this is a focus more on business.
Yes, it's focused on business,
not on our personal.
But I know. But the whole story was.
It's a good
I
story.
think there is like a storyline in a way that how our practice become. I felt like Marlon had. He's 10 years older. So he started the practice while I was still a student. I mean, I attend his lecture. We have different, training.
Yeah.
And then when we end up coming to Arkansas, after we got married, I came to Arkansas. We lived in that White House behind the whole, what is that?
The co-op.
The co-op.
Yeah.
Like back then, it was like divided into 4 apartments. We were upstairs. Anyway, so when I first got here, I worked at Hyde Jackson. It was the only company that was hiring. They were really nice to me. They would, I have a different training. They were like, but you have never worked in Arkansas. You don't know how things work here. I was like, okay. So like, I got like a really reduced rate to work there, even though I had like, I don't know, at that time.
You bring a very unique skill set.
And more experience.
Yeah, and I worked there, and then it was actually the first place that started to do computers at the time, and I got to learn it there. So after a year or two of this, I realized, and I would act as a critic when I would come and visit Marlon. I would see like he did that Ozarks building, and I would like, well, Marlon, this is all you can do? Like, we would kind of like challenge him to kind of be thinking a little bit differently. Anyway, so we had always, in a way, kind of collaborate in a design thing. But I didn't really join him until our second, I think, child. I was pregnant with our second kid, and we needed the bedroom, like the back room that we were using as a studio.
She kicked me out. So.
Yeah. So, and I think also our practice grew from the fact that Marlon's idea of practice was like he was going to do 1 or 2 houses a year. That's it. Like, and anything bigger than that, he was going to collaborate with a local architect. At the time, I think he there was an opportunity for one project, and I think he was collaborating with another slightly bigger architecture firm, because by this time he's really busy, right? He's a professor, he can design at night, but he can't do the production. So one day I said, like, Marlon, this is what I do. Like, why can't I'll just draw it for you, and then that's how we started. Like, I would draw his drawing, and then
let's paint a picture here before you get, because now, I got to tell the story, which is, so I'm working on 2 projects. I already had done a few houses, but I got an opportunity to go back to North Carolina to do a honey house.
And this is
what's the timing?
1998.
So this is a few years into
6 years in.
Yeah.
I'm getting to teach. Have main experience teaching. I just gotten tenured. And I didn't even believe in tenure, and I was their tenure track, and the dean said, well, you got to do stuff. And so I never published anything. I hadn't done any awards. I wasn't a member of the AIA. So I joined and started submitting some of the work, and winning, some awards, some just local, like the Terminella building here and the Ozarks and so forth. But, and some houses. But I think the opportunity came along to do this little honey house, which was in addition to the house that we had done for her, which was a $40,000 project. But I thought, well, how do you make a honey house for a beekeeper? And so we prefabricated it here to control the quality, and the cost. And also because you couldn't keep constructors in the mountains in North Carolina they had all these seasons. They had like deer season, squirrel season, dating season. I mean, just tons of seasons. And so it's like, well, what if we prefabricate it, ship it out there, and then take these folks from good friends of mine, Adam and Dick from Razorback Iron Works, and they went out there and put it all together.
Wow.
And it was a fantastic project. At the same time, we're doing a tower, the Keenan Tower House, that we've been asked to do a tree house, right? And so I'm drawing by hand and every stick, whatever. And Ati's like, well, I can do this. So we had an orange iMac, tangerine iMac. So she's putting it on the computer, and I'm with a T-square drawing by hand.
Wow.
It was just kind of a really transitional time. And I was also teaching at the time with one of the most academic and theoretical architects in the world, Peter Eisman, in New York, who'd also done the Jewish Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, had done the Wexner Center at Iowa State. So I'm getting to teach with him. So I'm the Neo-Luddite. This is the guy that, cutting edge. And so it's interesting contrasts, right, that are going on. But those 2 projects got completed about the same time.
Basically, I start to draw that one project, and after that, I start drawing all the project on the computer.
Yeah, anything on the
And then I remember...
But I wanted to talk about the business thing, about what happened with those 2 projects that launched us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to have these breaks. There's breaks that happen. It's just something where if you read that book, what was it, Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point and so forth, things sort of tip. So you're tilling the soil. You have this idea about how you want to practice. I was basing the practice on Faye Jones. You don't have any marketing. There's no business cards. You don't collaborate. You don't do competitions. You just do whatever walks through the door. That's how Faye ran.
And imagine half of his time is teaching. So he felt like I only have half the time. Well, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, with 2 kids, I need flexibility. Like we need, if I'm going to draw this, I need to draw more stuff than just 1 or 2 a year.
Right.
So it's like having that time to do it and do it at scale in a way.
So
and how just so people who aren't in the industry, how do you choose things that you can integrate your style with, or versus just designing an interior office build out, or how do you?
Okay. Well, I decided earlier on there wouldn't be any bread and butter projects. The kind of things that are kind of throwaway products so you can make a buck. Faye Jones told me, because I asked him, I said, how did you do 60 years of practice and all the work is so consistently, it's such a high level. And he says, well, what I see, basically he said, I decided to start the firm the way I wanted to end it.
Wow.
He said, you don't wake up at 50 and decide you're going to do good work. It doesn't work that way. You have to start out the narrow path, and do the hard work of things you will do and things you won't do.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons I taught was to provide the means by which I could pick and choose what I wanted to do. And so the Honey House was an opportunity. The Tower House with James Keenan was, I used to pinch myself. It's like, I can't believe we're building this. We're actually building, a 7-story house. And you don't know what you're building. I mean, you're just doing it, and you haven't done it before, and it's happening. It's getting built.
Yeah.
And, we had, houses that way too, and we would help manage the construction because nobody wanted to build them because they didn't look like everything.
Well, and talk about that too for people who are in the industry, the difference of designing something and actually getting it built, and like the struggle there.
Right. Well, a lot of general contractors, they don't want to mess with that because it's a lot of risk on them, and there's not a lot of money in it for them. And so Ati and I, we would just work with the subcontractors and get to know this whole network of subs. And we would, because we knew enough to know that we didn't know. If I didn't know how to do a detail, I go get the sub and sit down with them and said, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? How would we do this? And so we start this kind of buy-in. They start to buy into what we're doing. Then they said, well, here's how I would do it. And what I've learned in the business that almost every time the way they want to do it probably be less expensive and, not as difficult. So I'm learning how to simplify details and things of that nature. So we're both mutually benefiting, but then they get excited about doing something they don't normally do.
Yeah.
And so that's how we were.
And we start small,
that.
like in the beginning, I think we, would do like a garage addition with like maybe a renovation of a kitchen, and then the next one is a full house, but a small one,
Yeah.
So, and every time it's like you scale up, but you also scale in terms of your design pushing. And then it got to a point where we're designing our own house. But the lot that we found had a creek going diagonal. And then I called Marlon. I'm like, wait, there's a lot for sale. And I was like, no, never mind. There's a creek, can build it. And Marlon said, what? There's a creek. I'll go take a look at it after studio. So he came and take a look. He was like, call the realtor. We're going to get this. We can build
on this.
we
got it for half price.
We can build a bridge. He said, that's what he said. Like, I didn't even think about a bridge. I'm like, so anyway, so once we decided that we can bridge over without, putting culvert and making a big investment on making the land ready to build, I was like, okay, we can do a bridge. So that's like, I think the whole idea of familiarity, like building a bridge makes sense. Then I could picture it. You can't imagine like building a house. That's a bridge, but a covered bridge. Think about it, right?
You're learning from the site, what the site speaks to you about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to finish about the top because there's something momentous that happened. And it was almost very, so the one thing I've always appreciated about University of Arkansas, they've always been very supportive of teachers who practice. That's not always true. But because of Faye Jones and because of the Ozark Moderns and people like Herb Fowler and John Williams and so, they were very supportive of that. So, and they were also supportive of the opportunity to maybe teach elsewhere, as long as I come back, right?
Yeah.
So we finished these projects, and a magazine published one of them, Honey House, and butchered it. Just terrible job. And I called them up in New York, and they thought, what do you think? And I was like, oh, no, that's not very good. I said, I have all these photos. I had invested my entire fee I got on this Honey House into the photography because I knew it should be out there. And you didn't use the photos that I have, and they had a writer out there, and I said, the writing doesn't go. The writer wrote, but their photos don't go with it. It's just like, I just feel like I look at the other projects and I said, I feel a little zip code challenged here. All the projects from California, New York, they're all 3 pages, whatever. We get 2, and you don't even get it right.
Yeah.
He goes,
and you don't do that. You don't complain about any publication. That's the lesson learned. You don't.
But this guy goes, Well, he goes, it had nothing to do with it. So I assure you. It's like, well, I don't get what happened because it's unfortunate. You had the photos for 4 months. Why didn't you use them? He goes, well, they just weren't up to our artistic standards. I was like, okay, why don't you tell me? I could have flown back out, flew the guy back out, and we would have retook him. And I said, and this guy used to work for Tim Hersley, so he's the most prominent architect photographer in the country, and he's out of Little Rock.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they said, oh, well, we didn't think you'd have the resources to fly back out there. And I said, what did you say? And I don't want to say this over the thing, but I gave him a few F-bombs, and I said, do you realize what you just say?
Yeah.
I said, you think because I'm in the Ozarks and I'm this little guy doing stuff and I'm trying to do my best to practice that I don't have resources to go reshoot, and so you just do crap,
Yeah.
And insult the project? And I was furious. Mm-hmm. And, we'll help you on the tower, because we want to publish. I said, no, I don't know about that. So what I did, I got over the anger part of it. I said, I got to get this republished and I got to get this tower redone. Mm-hmm. And I had met a guy, Robert Ivy, who had written Fay Jones' monograph, National Book Award winner. I'd met him here. He's from Mississippi, another Southerner. He was the editor, CEO of Architectural Record in New York at the time. I called up his secretary and said, hey, I'm going to be in New York, and I just would love to drop by and show you some of the new work we're doing, and well, I wasn't going to happen to be in New York. It was my sole purpose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so this guy was like, yeah, I met him, but man, he goes, that's pretty brash. And normally architects just send in the work. We don't meet with them in person.
Yeah.
But he gave me some time, and I showed up at lunchtime in Penn Station, wherever their office was, and I started showing my work to him, and he's looking at it. And I showed him the Honey House. I said, this was published, but I know y'all don't normally publish, but other people have been published, but they did a terrible job. And he goes, yeah, I don't know about that. And then I started showing him the tower, and he just stopped and he said, whoa. And he stood up and he said, this famous architect from New York, this looked like John Haydock, a famous teacher, grew up and built something. I said, is that an compliment? He goes, yes. And he went in and said, hold on. Goes in, he gets all his editors, pulls them back into the room, said, sit down, start over. Started over. And then he shoot them all out. And he turned the light on, he closed the door, and he turned around and said, I've been waiting for somebody like you to come in here. People that are out in the centers of fashion, they're doing really good work, but don't get the attention. It's like but you're out there working every day, trying to make a difference in your place. I said, yeah. Yes, I'm going to do a firm profile on you, and I have 5 others I want to do that. And so he did this magazine called Outside the Centers of Fashion. It's his issue of Arc Record. Wow. It was won a national award for that issue. That was in 2001. At the same time, I'd been invited by MIT to come teach there, which was a real honor to do it, and the university allowed me to do it.
Wow.
So the magazine came out the day of my lecture at MIT with the tower on the cover.
Wow.
Because they never tell you that, which was huge.
Yeah.
National.
Oh,
We got thrust into the whole national, the phones ringing and the whole thing. So that was a big moment for the firm. I just wanted to say that. And then we didn't have any work for 2 years, practically. Ati and I, office, we're doing a few little dress shop here, Masons, First Masons, and a few things. And then we get this opportunity too. Remember, Ati, with Gentry Public Library, to take that. That is
took 7 years.
7
They didn't
years.
have money.
It's the least expensive public library
We
in the
had
state
to
of
bid
Arkansas.
3 times, and they had $1 million, and it came in over like always,
Yeah.
But it was
It's
during
never
the,
enough. But
tough
it finally
economic-
got built
Yeah.
after the
07.
third bid.
But that project
Yeah.
was taking a 100-year-old hardware store and turning it into a public library. It's the first national library award winner in the state. And there's now some other ones that have been done in Little Rock, but still the least expensive.
Yeah.
$110 square foot. So they really take care of this.
But I think it's
library,
really
too.
important as a small town like that. You've been to all the small town in America that are dying, right? Because there's a Walmart somewhere else, and the center of town is dying. It was like that. but like they really wanted to use that corner that used to be
on Main Street.
Yeah, on Main Street.
Yeah.
That used to be their general store, and they had like they tell us about what was it like.
The mayor used to eat barbecued beaver.
Barbecued beaver, like apparently
they sold buggies up in the top, and then hooked them up to the horses below. And so it was a whole history and a legacy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we developed all these really beautiful details, and we left it in its ruined state.
Yeah, the idea of that is like you're displaying the skeleton of the existing concrete brick building as an artifact,
because we didn't
and
have
then everything
money.
else is attached to that. So it's like treating it like it's a real object to be cherished.
Yeah.
The folks with little
so when you look at the detail, the bubble glass and everything was about that. So it's like, I think that's really important too, like the recognition not only as, an incredible library, but people start to see the difference of how we treat architecture in a way that, you can see across the street. What was that? That looked like, it's fake ethos.
Yeah.
To look beautiful and perfect when is that really a historic? No, it's not. It's covering a real aging building that is beautiful underneath it with a full on fake foam. So we didn't want to take it that way. We took it a completely different route. And I think that's when people start to understand the things that we do and how we approach architecture in a way that are really authentic. And I think it had a lot to do with Marlon teaching and keeping that side of the business and understanding the current things that are happening, the discourse that's happening in architecture. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that we do had a lot to do with like the fact that the teaching helped involve, make the architecture inform, and also us building it, like allow the academic side of practice, particularly, see what we can do. So I think, and now what we're finding is that in terms of architecture, we can build so much faster here in our area or in this part of America, because there's a lot. We still have to follow all of the regulations, like stream side ordinance, all the zoning, all of the, if you're doing things with lead and all that, you still have to follow that, but things happens faster.
Yeah. And
things like that is harder in other places. So
I want to turn it back to another critical business thing, because you have to have people believe in you. That's really key. You'd like to think you do it all on your own, but you don't. You have to have advocates. You have to have people that give you opportunity, and opportunity is what we've been fighting for. That's all you have in this deal. But you have to earn it.
And we've had people along the way, like us.
Well, I wanted to.
I know, but let me just add to that. Like, it's either you have a client at a house that believe in you that you can do the house differently, like the whole hybrid house with a horse under in the car. Like that's an important client that feel like I can live upstairs and my horse live down below and my car is down. Like, so like small scale. And then you go to the next one and next one.
And that's so it's the opportunity to scale.
Yeah.
I got the residential stuff is interesting, but you're dealing with all these personalities and all that. And, I don't mind doing it, but we got a taste of doing public work with Gentry and that process, and it's messy and, but we're seeing something come out of it. Well, the John Tyson, his house caught on fire, and he, the architect of that house was Cy Sutherland, who was also teaching in the faculty of historian. Anyways, he had called and said, "My house is damaged. Do you, Cy isn't practicing anymore. As you have somebody that might could help kind of renovate this, get this." Anyways, so I naturally get the call from the dean, and I go and meet Mr. Tyson, and within 3 weeks we're demoing and designing and getting things up there. And he, it's a beautiful house, but he was also thinking at the time about a new golf clubhouse, a golf course, and gave us the opportunity to compete against some other firms for the opportunity to do this clubhouse. And with it would come the Razorback Center for the men's and women's golf team and all of that. So we did that competition, and lo and behold, we won it. And we are a firm, it's Ati and I and maybe one other person.
Like 4 people, I think.
And we pulled all-nighters, do the models and all that. Anyways, we won it. And his partners wanted, well, you need to get the guy who ran up second place because they're a real firm, and have them team. And I'm like, so I'm going to team with the guy who didn't get it and give them the fee?
Yeah.
I said, no. Yeah. And to John's credit, he's like, no, he give these guys, he trusted that we could do this. And means we had to scale.
Yeah.
I don't even golf. I know nothing. And so who comes to our office, because we're in the Easton building on the corner, John Lewis from the Bank of Fayetteville, comes over, who had been helping us, with our own financial planning and so forth, because we were having to start from scratch and just learning about how importance of good credit for a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he came over and says, I hear you have a new commission. And I'm like, how do you know that? He goes, it's a small community. and it's like, I said, you're going to need a staff. I said, yeah, we're going to need to hire some people. He goes, and you're going to need a credit line. I go, because we'd all just paid cash. Because you may not get paid right on time. You're going to have to pay other consultants, and you're going to have to do this. Said, come over here and let's talk about me getting you a credit line. So this guy, just based on us paying our bills on time, with them, because we'd taken a loan from him, gave us this amazing credit line in order to comfortably start the business, at another level.
Yep.
And so that was life-changing for us, the trust that we got, and then actually building this project and proving that we could scale up. It's a great clubhouse, and it's
And scaling up there, was that 5 more architects, or what was
it was about 4.
Yeah, so it's not just me drawing. Then we had like a lot of start to.
And so that
we usually get like the younger intern, because it's like that's what we could afford, students, and you train them. So around that time, then we could hire like real people with experience.
Right. So that's
so we don't have to train from scratch.
2.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the client, because the golf center, I was Frank Broyles and Bill Gray. They were basically providing the money to build it, and then using it on the land there of the blessings. That was really interesting. So a person to work with as well. And so this whole complex came together, and it proved that we could scale. And so now we're really like, man, we want to try some other things.
We could do it in-house
at
that point. Because Marlon never really thought that he could. I mean, he thinks that, he couldn't himself. Like he can design, but he can't execute, because he's too busy. So
we weren't trying to build a large firm.
No. We're still trying. We're on the Fay Jones model. Well, then I want to speed this up because we could be here all day. But then we got our first national project that we won by.
We got the Fulbright building. After that.
I was going to about the IMA building was before that.
Yeah.
Indianapolis Museum of Art, the Art and Nature Park. There we won. Another great story, but I don't have time. With Ed Blake, landscape architect out of Mississippi, who was doing some teaching here at Arkansas. We teamed together. We won this project to do the Ruth Lilly Pavilion and everything in that park. So that was a national project.
It's the Indianapolis Museum of Art. So our first museum project.
Yeah. And so that was a great opportunity. So we're working on that. And then we start working on a really nice house for Jim Blair. We're working on the Fulbright Library, converting that when the library moved into an office building, because they were going to tear it down.
Really cool project.
Yeah. So there are things happening, and we're growing. And then we're still working off Fay's model. And 2009 hits, the Great Recession. And phone quits ringing, and I'm scrambling because we've got 6 or 7 people now, and I'm trying to find them jobs.
And are you still teaching at this point?
Still teaching, and I'm calling all my friends here in Arkansas. I have a really good person. Could you got a job down in Bay St. Louis? Got another job up Roger. We're just doing everything we can to keep from laying people off, and then we got inspired a little bit by this idea of shovel-ready projects, a stimulus package. I never heard of that. You give a stimulus package. This is Obama at the time. And we had an idea. It's like, rather than go retreat and just cut and all that, why don't we do the opposite? Let's go to our credit line, take a loan from that, and change our business model to where we collaborate, we do RFQs, request for qualifications, we change our website, we have business cards, we do a portfolio that we can go out and
we're growing. We're going to grow.
We're going to grow, and we're going to represent ourselves because architects knew who we were, but clients didn't. And so we did that, and got all local folks like Doxa, the graphic design firm, and others, and started working to represent ourselves.
And we moved from the basement underneath David Adams there in the corner, into the Fulbright building. Also because when we renovate the Fulbright building, the area down below that used to be where we drive the car to drop off your books. Back then, you still have to get out of your car and turn. So we glass it in as part of the design, and then they find it kind of hard to lease out. And they were like, "Hey, it's a recession. We can give you a good deal if you move over here." And we're like, so we took it.
Yeah. So
it was like it kind of changed the image of who we are.
We were
as well.
real. Because the architects.
And also, it's not in the basement anymore. Well, it's like it's a glass-in, brand new building.
Yeah. But we were still at legit problems. You're not a real architecture firm because you don't really have to make a salaries or pay
the local.
Things like, no, we're doing that. But because I taught, it was like, oh, you're just sucking off the government tit. I literally had somebody say that. It was like, really?
Yeah. And so, at the time, the biggest companies, like architecture company, are all in Little Rock because that's where, and they've been there a long time. And they have branches here in small branches, just like everybody that are there are here, right? And they used to have this kind of like, I would say, downright hatred towards.
I think it's hard.
I don't know, or didn't believe in the legitimacy of our company like us that started from nothing, and also the fact that he's teaching. That whole idea of him being a professor and also an architect, make them think like you're not really real architects. It's like you're just teaching. Yeah, you're just teaching. Yeah. So I had to overcome that for many, and I think many years
doing the blessings, doing these other projects that are real and they have real budgets and all those things. We were executing, and so it isn't just paper architecture. We were actually executing, and these projects are not dying the death of 1,000 cuts that happens to a lot of projects, right? So, anyways, within 2009, by the end of 2009, by rebranding and stuff, we formed a team to do. To compete for FHS, Fayetteville High School, and with Hyde Jackson DLR out of Kansas City, and we won that project. And that was huge because that pulled us out of what I call the death spiral. When the ground's getting closer, you're out, man. I hadn't had a paycheck in a year. It's like it's tough. And then miracle upon miracles, the dean of the school, we were in line for a new architecture school, and he made an argument to the chancellor that we should be considered, and we helped them get money from the Reynolds Foundation, and the Reynolds Foundation said, we'd like to keep this design team. We teamed with Polk Stanley, and so we got the architecture school and FHS going. So we were able to make it through the recession, growing rather than shrinking. And it all started with, let's do the opposite rather than keep cutting. Let's actually take a risk. I don't know how we're going to pay it back, but put the money back into the firm. Invest. Double down. Yeah.
And when you say you won these projects, for someone who's not familiar with an architecture bid, how that works, does that just mean your rate was lower? Does that mean your design's better? Like tell people what goes into that.
Yeah. So it was our qualification, the team that we formed, and the impression we made with the owners that this is the people we want to work with. We didn't necessarily have a design at that time. You're based on your qualifications, your proposal. Fees are part of it, but our fees are never lower.
For blessing, for example,
it all depends. That was a competition.
It all depends on what that means, right?
That was a design competition.
Yeah. The Fulbright building, I think these guys are from Fayetteville. They're seeing us doing work that look slightly different, you know. So they came to us and they were like, we just got this building. We felt like you might be the right architect. And like, so they talked to us knowing that they would like to work with us because of what they see we're doing around town. And then we still had to negotiate. So if things work well with our fee proposal and we have time to do it and we can do it, then sometimes it's just based on negotiation, based on the fact that they like our design or what we've been designing. Right. So that's one. With Blessing, for example, he was looking for something different. Like he actually hired a golf clubhouse architect from Atlanta when he was designing the golf course. But he said every time he's looking at it, it looked like I've seen it before, like in some other place. He was like, this land is so precious. I want some. And he knows it deep inside that he doesn't want what he's seen. Like every time there's guys giving him the design, it was like, I don't know.
He had a vision and he the experts kept not listening, basically. So, I mean, a lot of it's just listening and making a pitch. You know, you have to pitch what you can do and that you're going to be the right partner to work with them.
And sometimes people don't want it. Like they don't come to you because they don't want that kind of design, because we design in a certain way. We don't, we have a certain product and we listen to them, but it's always like it has a certain DNA to it, right? So for John Tyson's, because we work on his house and he understand how we work, understand the process, he liked what we bring. It's very different, but he's ready for something different. So at the time, that's when he was saying that, hey, I have this golf clubhouse. I already have a design for it, but can you take a look at this? Like, and then he was like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
I want to bring like 5 different teams. They're all local. Like, so he invited, I think 5, right?
It was 4, but
4.
But
four
so it was a
locals.
design competition.
It was a design competition.
That's another way to do it.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure we kind of cover where where you guys are at now, because I think it's extremely impressive.
To that point. Sorry. We were just laying the foundation for all that.
The foundation, which is
sorry, so this thick foundation.
No, it's good. And just again, for people who aren't familiar with the architectural space, is architecture, when you say fee, is that based? Y'all kind of get together and you're like, we think this project's going to take this many hours. We charge this much per hour.
We task it out, and then we give a percentage of construction. Okay. Typically, we also our fee usually includes basic services like the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, the structural. Okay. And then there could be additional services as needed, like lighting or civil engineering, or all of those things, landscape architecture.
And you also know what the general fee is. Like in general, there's a certain market cap to a project fee, and that's why, like a developer, for example, they have to have the lowest fee in order to make their pro forma work. So that might not work for them to hire people like us. So that's why, like.
But it did work on Fulbright, because that was a developer. But that was a developer that was wanting to find the right project for us to work as I said. But we don't, they kind of have to come to us in a way, I mean, in that regard. So a lot of times when people come to us, they already know our work and they're kind of interested. It's a little different when you're going out trying to do RFQs or RFPs, the invites. And then you're out there kind of cold. And in our experience, if we don't have a connection, a personal or professional connection in some ways, and it's your law of averages are lower.
We do have, like right now, we had worked with a couple of developers already. We have one that we did. You might have seen it in our website, the PS 1200 project with Quonset huts. In Fort Worth, that's a developer project, and usually it's like a developer that will negotiate the fee with us, but more importantly, they want to work with our design ideas because they know we will push the envelope a little bit. We are also doing one with Tishman Speyer, which is a national developer, and it's a project in Boston for Harvard Business School. So they have their new enterprise campus, so where they are building a couple of labs, one conference and convention center. We're doing the hotel part. And how many stories?
It's 17 stories.
17 story, 400
So that's
keys.
well under construction.
Yeah, so
now we're doing the restaurant, the pool,
and the rooftop
bar, or not pool, but the rooftop bar.
So a lot of time when you're building with a developer, it's because they want our design and they will negotiate the fee with us and make their pro forma work with however, like the one in Boston, for example, we're doing the design and some of the construction document integration, and they hire somebody else to do all the CD and CA for that. So
what we've decided to do, once we got through and kind of proved that we could do some of these projects, we're like, we have an opportunity to we're a local firm that's building a national reputation. Mm-hmm. So we have an opportunity to become a national firm that happens to be local.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where we're at today. Mm-hmm. And it happened because we started to marry some of what we're able to achieve through an economy of means, right? Mm-hmm. And maximizing the value of that. We kind of got known for that. I hate to say this, the MacGyver of architecture, but, but we thought
we can do more with less.
We can
basically.
do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it was like, that became a kind of national deal, but a lot of architects don't like that because, you making everybody have to work hard. But at the same time, we thought, let's marry some ambition with this. So I had an opportunity to be an industry advisory reviewer for embassies, for the OBO, for the State Department. They did that for 5 years. And then they had an IDIQ, which is an open call where you get an extended contract. And so we applied for that, 400 applicants. They hired 15 firms. The smallest firm they hired was us to do embassies.
Yeah.
So that was a 5-year contract. Now it's a 6-year. We've done, we just finished a design and everything for a new American embassy in the Central African Republic, which is the poorest country in the world.
I think
we're in the process of that build.
I think what I want to say about that is that, all the things that we started in the very beginning of the years as, architect, from scratch in this town and then building slowly to a larger scale. I think and through Marlon's teaching, I think that's a very important component because he's along the way with the stuff that we built and the teaching can help inform.
They integrate.
And the elevation of not only him as a professor, but also our practice on the national level. Like he wouldn't get invited to be an industry reviewer for the embassy program, which now allow us to submit to become one, and was selected to become one of the 16 firm, to design embassy worldwide. It's because of his teaching. And he wouldn't have been asked to teach. Marlon has taught everywhere, University of Michigan, Yale, Harvard, MIT, all the places that you could have think of, he has taught like semesters, and they still ask him to do that. He doesn't have time to do it. But he does. Like you're going back to Yale next
but I'm here
semester.
in Arkansas.
But
I'm still here in Arkansas.
I
think that's what's important.
The roots are important.
And I think what we built here is important.
The place.
No.
The place
this is
that
home.
You're here.
This is the roots.
Yes.
And this is why I think we've been given opportunity, especially in Bentonville. Mm-hmm. Again, we have to. Nothing's given. Mm-hmm. You earn it. That's the way. That's the Arkansas way. You don't. There's no crazy money and there's no free lunch here. You have to earn it. But the work that we have gotten to work on in Bentonville, like the Thaden School, thank God for the Walton Design Excellence Program that basically is advocating for good design in Northwest Arkansas. The Crystal Museum, Crystal Bridges Museum, the opportunity to do the museum store, that was a competition.
Yeah,
we had to earn that.
Yeah,
but we did it, and we proved that good design can be good business. That store paid for itself in 4 months. Profits.
That's excellent.
So that sends a great message to funders and owners. Mm-hmm. And then the same with the Whole Health Institute. This just will be opening up in May 1.
Yep,
that was a competition, and we did designs for it, and we won on the basis of ideas. And we're competing with firms from Chicago, from around the country. So that to me is really important to continue to do the work here and to be willing to scale. There's the ledger work, we teamed on that.
Yeah,
and we want to continue to do more work. I mean, the thing is about. The good thing is we're here, and we have proven that we can do work here. But there's also a lot of competition because people know that this area is good and is interested in building more. So there's a lot more competition.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily always have the opportunity because now there's a lot of people coming in. So we still have to,
we're still doing our push-ups.
So we have to open markets for elsewhere as well. We hope that it can be as easy for us, but it's not always.
That's really respect. There's a lot of respect there. We only have a few minutes left, so I just want to make sure we cover this. Did you have any?
Yeah, let's. 10 is what is our stop?
10-15.
Okay.
We're okay.
That feels good.
Yeah.
So let's recap kind of just as we're thinking through this. It sounds like 1992 is roughly when Marlon Blackwell Architects began.
Here.
Yep. And the first, we'll call it 6 years, y'all are trucking along, you're teaching, you're learning, you're doing a few projects a year. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the honey house happens.
Honey house and the tower house.
And those kind of put you on the map.
On the national map.
And
I didn't come here until 95. So before that was Marlon. 95 I came, but more acting as a critique to his work while I worked locally.
Yeah. Okay. But we started together in 01.
Yeah.
Okay.
In 01, that's when we incorporated. We decided that I think it had a lot to do with, by then we start to hire a lot of students and young architects, and I became the de facto business person because I'm not spending half my day teaching, right? I'm here full time.
Yeah.
So then you had to handle all the staffing and everything, which, by the way, is one of the most important thing is that we cultivate local, mostly in the beginning, a lot of young architects that are graduating from the university and cultivating their talent. And then we realized that we need to incorporate in order to provide the workplace that we need for them to thrive. So meaning that, getting them health insurance and, 401k, things like that, right? Being not only because that's the whole thing, the whole idea of the Faye Jones model didn't work for us because a lot of, not only the scale of the work, but also we rely so much on the talent that are here on an everyday basis. You might see Marlon or maybe occasionally me, but every project relies on, 4 or 5 more people that work within that team, and they work very closely with us, and they're very important. Some of them are no longer here. They went on and, opened their own practice, very successful, a lot of them elsewhere. So,
and I really respect that about the latest book. There's you list every person who's even been here before. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's can't do it without. I read The Fountainhead when I was a student. I believed it. And then after I started really making work and real practice, it's wow, there's a lot of bullshit in here. It's you got to do it with a team. You've got to empower that team, and you've got to help them feel like part of the authors as well. So you're creating a framework by which these products can evolve. Right? And so because it's, as I said earlier, it's one thing to have ideas; it's another thing to actually execute.
Yeah,
and that's what we've been trying to prove. I know you were trying to summarize.
So then, and you guys move into that building, 2001, 2002 is the Tyson project, and you guys kind of start to pick up more steam locally. And then it's 2009, recession hits, but instead of shrinking, you're really starting to go outbound and start to really focus on growing the business.
Right, to really
scale up.
And that's where Fayetteville High School came in. Again, we're part of a team, but we were the design lead, and then the School of Architecture with Polk Stanley, and again, these are huge projects. Say for a small firm.
Well, what would you tell someone who's maybe at that stage right now, where they have the opportunity to? It's risky to go on to that next. That's a very big jump.
It scale wise, yes, it is. That's a great question because it's whatever I say may have worked for us, may not work for other folks. I don't know. It's like what was that guy Hunter S. Thompson? What's worked for you? And he goes, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but it doesn't work for everybody. So same thing here. I think first of all, you gotta learn. You have to have something to offer, first of all. If you're just doing what everybody else is doing, and that's a different business model.
Yeah. And
that's a business model that's legit and, valid. I don't begrudge anybody going that route, but that's just not the route we chose to go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you have to learn the language of your own discipline. Doesn't matter whether you're in real estate. Doesn't matter whether you're in medicine or whatever. You need to understand the language of your own discipline. So you don't just get a degree and you're done learning.
Yeah.
And then it's all about making money. It's the money will come. And that was one thing I learned about selling Bibles, so forth. Don't focus on the money. Focus on the service. Focus on purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that's key. I often caution people to, qualify the projects, and put together the teams that can get those projects. That's really key, getting the right team. And if you don't have the expertise, or maybe from a design standpoint, I really need to up my design game, well, then team with somebody that might be smaller, may have a little bit more design edge, and collaborate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a worthy thing to do. But I think it's also, Ati is really the more entrepreneurial of the two here. So I'm Dr. No, and then I always wind up saying yes.
I think it takes
two. I know we complement each other, but the point being is maybe you should be answering this, because from a business standpoint, we did counterintuitive things.
Yeah.
Like, everything we need to shrink. And then we're like, but there's this stimulus package and people are investing in themselves. So
I think it's not that. I think it's
about,
I think it's, I didn't
you have to
think
invest
of it.
in yourself.
I didn't even think about that. I think about the recession is hitting. What do we need to do to prepare ourselves? So we figured we need a new website. So it's
but that's investing in yourself.
Exactly. But what I meant is it's a matter of survival. And you sit there and you try to figure out, what do we need in order to survive? So we have to go out there and start doing more. So things like every single time where I feel like there is, a challenge, and you kind of sit there and how do you rise to that challenge? For example, we are at the ending cycle of our embassy work. So we are not gonna, we did the 5 years, and this is unlimited IDIQ, meaning that any work can come to us. You don't have to re-interview for that. Mm-hmm. So now we are extending for another year. And then after that, we fall off the cycle. So knowing that we don't have this possibility of any new embassy, what do we do? So every time you think about it and you're like, okay, I need to maybe hire a marketing person now that does this full time. I need to have a business person that goes and, do outreach on behalf of our company. You kind of try to figure out things.
Pivot.
You kind of, you have to always be on your toes.
But you have to do
what you need
you
to
have
do.
to have some core values, though, and you have to know what those are. And the people that are working with you need to know what those are. What are your core values? What are the principles that help you overcome circumstance?
What are yours?
Well, our principles is, we try to use judgment before haste. We try to reflect on things before we make a decision. We look at the pros and cons that are implied by that. We try to think about the fundamentals of what we do, which is scale, proportion, the proper use of materials, natural light, and environments that are healthy environments in many ways. Our principles, too, are to provide great service. We're not nickel-dimers. I refuse to make it transactional, our relationships. It's about service, but it's not being a servant. There's a difference between service and being a servant.
Yeah.
So we're not tools. We refuse to be a tool or somebody's pencil. We're there to work with people together, and we're purpose-driven. So keeping everybody on the team, contractor, owner, design team, focused on purpose, on the project, not on somebody's ego or somebody's just, the bottom line is part of that purpose, but it's, what is the project and what does it offer back to society, and that's part of the purpose. But what I'm saying is if you don't have those values, it's all about just a transactional thing, and then the medium happens to be buildings, it could be anything, right? It could be a car wash. Then circumstance often directs you rather than you directing circumstance. And that's I think, Faye used to say, I have a set of core values that I live by and that I build by, and they're not that different.
Wow.
And so I feel similarly. Our core values is, we be kind to people. You make your art, and you don't just always swim downstream.
Yeah.
You swim upstream as well to get something realized.
Well, I think that's really evident, and just both of you, it's just like continue to innovate, continue to work hard, and go. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy walking in, seeing the bear. What you said as we were walking in, you got to see the bear.
The bear is bigger than you.
Yeah.
And what do you do? Do you run away, or do you fearlessly take on, metaphorically, the challenges that are bigger, but because the purposes are higher, they're important. And we have a strong belief that what we do is important. It is what we leave behind that enriches and dignifies a place, right? And the problem with most places is that they look like a lot of other places you can find anywhere in the country, and people's reality gets conditioned by that, and their expectations get lower.
Yeah.
But what if you offer an alternative model, a new way of thinking about it, a new way of looking at it? Then what you do is you interrupt their understanding of that reality, and you expand it, and you actually raise their expectations. Oh, wow, that's really amazing. That can happen here. The clinic right there would have never happened with that client if it wasn't for Crystal Bridges.
Wow.
Because the idea that art could be part of the conversation in Northwest Arkansas as a cultural transformer, right? A cultural catalyst that enriches our daily lives, which I think that museum was a catalyst, allowed us to talk about a medical clinic that could have a sense of identity and artfulness, and yet at the same time introduce painterly qualities on the inside the environment could be something that actually children want to go to rather than run away from, those sorts of things. So that's the kind of thing that you want to leave behind. And I think that's what makes Northwest Arkansas unique, is there's a sort of concentration of artists, makers, designers, and visionaries and benefactors who are kind of in many ways working together with a common purpose.
So good.
And that's why we're still here.
Yeah.
And don't want to go to New York or wherever.
So it's amazing. I think we've got like 10 minutes left, so I'll just bring us up to 2025.
Yeah.
Whether it's revenue or how many employees y'all have. I know you just opened an office in 2024 in Bentonville. Just kind of talk us through the scale of Marlon Blackwell Architects, and then maybe talk a little bit about a project you're working on that you're really excited about finishing, or maybe just finished.
Yeah. Well, I think Ati and I together, the firm we're at 25 right now.
26, I think.
26? Okay. And a wide range of experiences and stuff. We have incredible people here. So that's one thing we've worked really hard at, is just building a strong team that believes in what we're doing and feels like they're part of it too. It's really, really important. And we've seen our revenue increase with that, with being able to do more. And we run a pretty tight outfit. Again, Ati's the brilliant mind here of the business and the entrepreneurial deal. She didn't like to hear that, but that's the truth. And so she makes that happen. But at the same time, we've learned how to work together to where we're now, I think, stronger as a design firm, because we now find a great deal of alignment in our design sensibilities and what we can do. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, again, the project is massive a lot of times, so it takes a lot.
Whole health
and
is
integration of a lot more the interior spaces versus the outside. So that's
like a balance.
much more integrated. It takes a big team for a long time.
Used to be you have these really robust exteriors and stuff, and you get on the inside, and it's like, oh, what happened? They ran out. But but Ati's really asserted and kind of developed her own sort of design sensibility to complement what we're doing outside, and then we work together both outside and inside. So Whole Health is a great example where it's a project that we worked inside out and outside in.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to make that specific to its place on that campus and the ravine and how it captures space before you go into the ravine, it's event space. We're using the local vernacular, the giraffe stone. It's never been used this way before in terms of the scale of it. We even made the stones larger so that it adjusted to being larger walls. This, I'm talking about the giraffe. It's a vernacular that where people would take field stone.
Yes.
Cast crop here as rocks. So, use those. But, it's a project for us excited about because it's part museum, part education center, part office building, part national headquarters for ideas about whole health and as well as art bridges, which is getting, again, art out of museums, basements, and into communities.
Yeah.
Amazing
But
purpose.
I think we would like to do more of that. Now that that's coming to an end, I think that has showcased like our ability, because that was something that we have done elsewhere, but not here. We find it scale-wise, we don't get, it goes to other people.
Yeah.
So I think this is, with the exception of maybe School of Architecture, this is the second big building that we've done in our local area.
And how big was that, IT?
This one is 85,000 square feet. School of Architecture was
100,000.
100,000, yeah. But then we associate with Polk Stanley, so that was great. And this is on our own, 85,000. And we had, the parking deck. So we like to do more of that. And I think that's why in 2025, 2024, we started with that branch office in Bentonville so that we could service our client better. That was the intention, to know that we're committed to the northwest part, the northern part of Northwest Arkansas. Because, sometimes 30-minute drive to Fayetteville is harder. Also give our people that has to service the northern Bentonville project, for example, a place to be so that they don't, of course, whenever it's under construction, we have the trailer, but,
now we have the office.
So now we have the office,
Yeah.
so we can have meetings there. So that's what we want to do. We have hired other people that we didn't have before, like business executive that kind of help, kind of like go and visit potential client that we might not have time to do ourselves in the past. So that's been great.
And we're still going after the national work.
Yeah.
So we're, I can't talk about it, but we're invited for a headquarters of a very prominent organization in Detroit. We talking to folks in New York, big hospital there, just their universities. There's just things that we're still ambitious about that, but we don't, it's our anchor. Our roots are here, and so that's what we're really trying to continue to develop. That some of the other projects that we're excited about are we're excited about all of them. We're like children; we love them all. But this project we're doing to turn William Faulkner's old mule farm into a writer's retreat to bring back folks from Mississippi who are trying to find their voices, writers, and a chance to
be in a place,
engage with Mississippi and have a place to stay.
Like a fellowship.
The new Columbus, Indiana air traffic control tower will be the first air traffic control tower with public space. And that's a great project. This new UMS project, the Orthopedic Sports Medicine project, I think is going to be very innovative and beautiful, simple brick buildings in a 30-acre meadow. That hopefully start construction soon. A wonderful project. So there's just and a host of things that we're doing.
So not just a practice, but I think going forward too, like thinking about what happens with us. It's like as we
housing, we're getting into housing. That's the thing we're really excited about right now.
Also, like people within the organization that might come up, after us and start thinking about that.
Succession.
Yeah.
Well.
Anyways, I think we're in a good place. But, we're, how would you say, moving forward, looking sideways.
Well, I'm in awe. It's extremely impressive, and especially being here. The last couple of questions here. I think one we like to ask, why Northwest Arkansas, which I think you kind of answered that, but with including in that, what's your vision for Northwest Arkansas for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years?
Well, I think the vision is that the civic quality the buildings and places in Northwest Arkansas will continue to evolve in a much more reflective and dignified way. That it fundamental civic dignity recognizes all people with value. And that they will continue to develop places where everybody feels welcome to come to, and they feel the fidelity to craft and thought that go into well-designed spaces and environments and buildings. And it's something that enriches their daily life, that makes them feel more alive, right, by being there. And so I hope that keeps happening. I think the Design Excellence Program and I guess, of course, the collateral projects that are happening around that, I hope there's a truly a sincere and authentic housing initiative that will take place for workforce housing for people, again, from that are in the market, or young people coming up, that's in the service industry where they have a place to live, that's they can afford to own. So we're going to have to do a better job at that. And I think that's going to be, the next big thing. I see this issue of health really being a big economic impact here. And I hope, one of the most impoverished building types, honestly, are schools and health projects.
Yeah.
There's something formulaic about a lot of them. I hope the models that are being presented here will continue to inspire other entities to up their game when they come to Northwest Arkansas.
And I think, for us, we came to Northwest Arkansas. I always thought that when I joined Marlon here, we'll only be here 2 years. We'll end up in California because that's where everything new and modern was happening, particularly architecture. But I feel like Arkansas, particularly this part of Arkansas, has been such a tremendous place to be. I think we just happened to be here at the right time. There were a lot of businesses and individuals that are making it what it is today, and we just kind of help contribute to that, and we like to continue to do so. I think I don't know what happened here. Of course, just all the pieces were in place, and we just happened to benefit from it, and now kind of help contribute to that. I remember talking to Alice one time. I don't know, we were walking. I don't know what it was, but I remember she said, "It's the crystal." I don't know if she was saying that, but it was she said, "It's the crystals." I like to think it's the crystals. Yeah. But I see tremendous growth and tremendous opportunity for everyone here in Northwest Arkansas. And I think it can only be better. And if all of us, that are lucky enough to contribute, to make it a home for us and for everyone else that come, I think that's going to be great. And I think it's funny because one of the things that we see that people talk about us is that how incredible the work that we're doing here, because you can only do it here. I can't imagine the ledger happening anywhere else because you can't build anything by right in most places. You have to kind of apply for special, and also the risk that somebody like us as an architect would take to allow someone to go up a building on their bike where you could fall off it, if you're not careful. But we think, I remember asking Marlon, Marlon, do we really want to take this risk? It's can you imagine a kid falling off their bike when they're making the turn, at the, whatever you call it? Yeah. And I remember Marlon saying yeah, of course. And somebody will fall, but it's are we going to prevent ourselves from doing this? It's so we're okay, we'll deal with it when somebody falls.
I don't think I said that.
But we make a higher rail, we kind of anticipate that.
We solve for all that.
Yeah, we solve for all of that. But at the same time, it's you have to take some risks in some way to make something like that happen. And it's the first ever bikeable building in the world. I think that says a lot, not only for the folks that actually fund the project, the architect that will do it and take the risk. We have other partners in that design.
We have design collaborators with that.
Yeah, design collaboration. But a lot of it, I think a lot of things that are happening here. We're talking to this writer at Design, and it's saying that he's calling it the American architecture of the 21st century because
it's American architecture. It embodies American values, principles,
and I know we talked about strangely familiar before, right? If you look at the the project that the new house that we did at Blessing for the Shaw, the front that are like very beautifully set up facade. It's based on, they wanted a courtyard house. Because they said as we age, they were in their 70s at the time, as we age, we wanted to be able to feel like you're outside without being outside. And one of the things was like, it's all glass, you still have privacy, they never feel cabin fever, everything is one floor. But the topography is slow. So you see what's single level on the front end, you go in the back, it's actually overhanging like a cantilever. So to me, that's a transformative typology of a courtyard house into something completely radical. In fact, it's quite radical. A lot of houses are really radical in some way because we could do stuff like that, transforming a certain type, and clearly making it strangely familiar, for example. And I think that's something that a lot of time I don't feel like you can do it elsewhere because of the limitation of the land or something, there's always something. So that's what's interesting about being here. And I see so much more possibilities as we go forward in the future.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is, it's amazing. And it's cool in y'all's field. You can see it based on the projects you've done. And so last question here as we wrap up. Open-ended. How do you define success?
God, I wish you would have asked me how you define happiness. But that's because I had a great George Bernard Shaw quote on that one. But maybe that is. I don't know. Maybe it's similar though. It's to me, it's always been being so busy doing what you love to do that you don't have time to worry about whether you're happy or not or successful or not or whatever. You're just doing what you love to do. That's to me the real measure of success. Do I love it? And I think success means to me is when you have to love it. You have to be willing to give great effort for it, and you have to be willing to suffer for it as well, if you need be. Because you love it so much, you it's not always going to be roses and everything. And success is being able to, understand purpose. Why am I doing this? And still loving to do it and finding ways to do it. And so, to me, success isn't a static thing. It's constantly in motion, and that's how I look at it. I feel successful when I'm doing things and when I'm being productive and when I'm, kind of in the pursuit of something, So Walker Percy, the writer said that the search is what we would all be on, perhaps, if we weren't so caught up in the sort of tediousness of our everyday lives, right? But then he said, but to be onto something, to be in the search is what's most important. Not to be onto something is to be in despair. And I think it's really important to understand that success to me is to be onto something, to be in pursuit of something. And I don't measure it monetarily. I felt very successful, quite frankly, when we had very little and are barely making ends meet and trying to dig out of debt. I still felt, but I'm onto something. I'm digging out of debt. I'm moving. And now we're in a different sort of economic situation some 30 years later. I still feel no less successful then than I do now. I just feel like, this other stuff comes along with it. But it wasn't the end, right? Yeah. End point. So that is a messy and is not easy to solve in, a soundbite. I wish I could do that. But, success is, doing your thing, man.
Yeah. So good. Thank you.
Well, I'll wrap us up here. One thing we like to do at the end of each episode is just talk through.
Oh, I thought you were going to say call the hogs. No. Don't make us call the hogs, please.
One thing we love to do is just share kind of our biggest takeaways from it and for our listeners too. And as I think through both of your stories, hard work really marks both you from moving over here to the scholarship, pursuing your academics, and then you working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, paying your way through school. I feel like both of your histories are really marked with hard work. And I think you can see it really translate well into how the business has grown, and also probably the values that you've instilled in your employees and everyone who works here. You're very team oriented.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great result of hard work. And so I think that's the first thing that's super clear. The second piece is pushing the envelope. And I know we talked about strangely familiar as kind of one of y'all's mottos here, but you look at the projects that y'all have done, and whether it's local or national, I mean, they're totally different. And it's, I mean, I'm looking at the bee house behind the honey house behind you, and it's like, that was 1998. That's like almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's continued. That's continued for 30 years.
Keeps going. I got to say, that little project, we won the architectural review out of London's emerging architects. Were one of the 5 winners. I got to deliver a talk based on that project to the Royal Institute of British Architects, and then go to Copenhagen to receive the prize.
Wow.
That's $40,000 project. People just use bees. And the fee was the $4,000 fee that I got went to pay for the photography, and so that I could get it out there in the world. I mean, it's kind of dumb, right? But I mean, it's this investing. You constantly have to invest. That was the other thing to success. Never just take the money and run. Invest. Put it back. Fold it back into what you're doing. And we do that. We're still doing that. We're not satisfied. We just hired Pentagram, which is one of the most well-known graphic design firms in the world. They're out of New York, to do our new website and kind of help us rebrand, help us think about the future. Because we want to provide a future not just for us, but for all the folks here.
Wow. And just kind of going back, I mean,
huge
I think
investment.
Right?
But you constantly have to keep doing that.
Yeah. And that's, again, pushing the envelope. And I think the story that really summed it up for me was you initiating a meeting with the CEO in New York and just getting it out there.
And like, who is this guy? The audacity of this guy to interrupt my lunch, but I would make shit up just so I could go to New York to put myself, because I knew, like selling a Bible, if I can sit across the table in person, not by email, not on a phone call, then people are there's then civility and courtesy enter in. And that's really key, because people are in general civil. In general.
And we try to say that to students. Like, we actually sponsor at least one minority NOMAS architect, which is National Organization of Minority Architects. So we try to provide a place for them to be able to come and do a summer intern with us. Now it's going into our 5th year. And every time I go there, and again, like any students that do internship here, I try to tell them, it's like, this place is really special. This place, meaning that here, Northwest Arkansas, is really special. Like, you guys are really special. Like, just have the audacity to actually know that you can do anything. You can pursue anything. And I think the product that we make here are being looked at as something really special. And it's not like, we are sometimes fascinated by other people's fascination with the work that we do here. When we're sitting here doing it for half what they can do elsewhere. And it's out of our own, wanting to do more. I think that's the whole thing.
I think asking a critical question always, whenever we're presented with a project, is how might it be otherwise? So here's how it is. Here's the status quo. Here's what it is. How might it be otherwise? And then go, what if? And then imagine. And just taking people on that journey, so they understand where they're at. Or, I'm talking about clients and this, where they're at, what their desires are. And then it's like, well, what if we did this? And it opens up a whole new set of possibilities. And those are the kind of clients that we have been fortunate, I think, to work with, who will come along this journey of kind of discover and trying to find wonder and dignity and joy in the project that they can benefit from an economic standpoint, but also from a people standpoint. Their people and the people they also serve. So that's so good.
Last thing, because I know we're at time, but as we think through, just again, the last big thing I learned, I think you even captured it there, this where creativity meets discipline. I think a lot of people don't associate discipline with creativity. In fact, quite the opposite.
It's the opposite. You have to discipline the imagination. That's what we teach. When we're teaching, we're trying to discipline the imagination. But you don't imagine out of nothing.
Yeah.
So if you don't know your own history of your discipline, you don't know, the basic fundamentals and values and skill sets, you can imagine all you want.
Yeah.
You're not going to make anything.
That's right.
I think the discipline aspect from a business standpoint too is very, very important. There's always challenges like a client or budget or whatever. Like, just be disciplined enough to know that I want this project built. I want it to be successful. What are the things that we can do to make it a success? So a lot of time the challenge is something that we can overcome. You just have to do it, and it's very hard sometimes. Like, a lot of time you'll be like, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to walk away. Like, don't walk away. You have it within you to keep doing it and make it as successful as you want it to be, not for others. Because a lot of time it'll be like, okay, what do you want? I'll do it for you. Like, and then you're like, oh yeah, don't look at that project. It wasn't mine. The client wanted this.
Yeah.
We've never have a single one that we have to excuse for that, because the challenge is on us to make it as successful in our eyes, not just in the client's eyes, because that's very, very hard to do in architecture, where you like give up your design, to appease something, either budget or client didn't like it. It's like, that's why when people ask us all the time, it's like, you guys must have great client. No, we have clients just like you guys. The thing is to keep your eyes on what you want. What is the matrix of success for you? And it also is, because it's like, these projects are successful to our client because otherwise they won't build it. But is it successful for us? Yeah, I would say every single one of it. We're happy, to have it the way it is because we made it that way.
Yeah. Appreciate y'all coming on. And how can everyone get a hold of Marlon Blackwell Architects? If they want to reach out for a project or however.
Anyway, there's of course the website, the phone call, the social media. You can
Come see
DM us. Comment.
42 East Center.
Come. We're here every day.
We've had folks just walk in, say, hey, I've got an idea for a project, and then, but yeah, sometimes it's just, info@marlonblackwell.com.
Yeah.
And then, we're easy to find.
Yeah.
We're in a geographical oddity, right? We're in Northwest Arkansas. Everything's, 20 minutes away. So 15 to 20 minutes. So
well, thank y'all again.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you
for your
so
time.
much. I appreciate it.